Welcome to this episode. I want to talk today a little bit about something that I spoke at a recent conference, the hypnosis conference, and I really enjoyed telling people about high performance anxiety. Not only because I think it's something that is very prevalent, but also because I think it's something that we can teach ourselves to get rid of, just as we've taught our minds, not on purpose, very unconsciously, but we have taught our minds to get into this pattern. And I was reminded this morning when somebody sent me a message, and just reading through her message and the things that she's been through and the things that she's thinking and so on, I got an inkling that she was also suffering from high performance anxiety. So if you're watching on YouTube, then you can see my slides that I gave at the conference. And if you're just listening, that's fine too, because I'm going to be really descriptive. So high performance anxiety is quite often misunderstood. People will think that you are overly worried about something that you have absolutely nothing to be worried about. And so they sometimes ignore people who have high performance anxiety. And as I go through these slides, you may recognize yourself, or you may recognize someone that you know, or somebody that you work with. And so it becomes really kind of relevant to us, and it resonates if you've got a person in mind, whether that's a person you know or it's a person you know really well because it's yourself. I know that I teeter on the edge of this quite a lot, and I have to pull myself back and start thinking differently. So what I want to talk about then is really this high functioning anxiety versus other types of anxiety. So why is it relevant to us all, even if we don't recognize it in ourselves? Well, we know that anxiety is a worry or a fear or an unease about the future. It's about future events, something that hasn't happened yet. So very often you get plagued with what ifs. Having some level of stress is normal and natural. Even some level of anxiety, and we've spoken before about a very low level, maybe before you're about to get up and give a talk, or you're about to get up and do your thing in the competition arena. That is sometimes something that helps to just keep you very, very alert. We're talking low level. But once it crosses that threshold and becomes higher level, then again, it could be quite natural, because maybe we are responding to something that is very stressful. But stress is meant to be switched on, and you get over whatever that incident is, and then it's switched off. And that's protective for the body. Whereas if we've got stress constantly, then that is obviously quite harmful. So we're talking about something that is beyond natural, because very often high functioning anxiety people are switched on at all times. High functioning anxiety people often appear very successful. They can look as though they're that swan that is swimming on the top of the water ever so beautifully and elegantly, but their legs are going at 10 to the dozen underneath. And although these people are often successful, they may look like they have it all together. They may look like they're fully in control. Behind that success is this constant inner dialogue with negative thoughts. What if I mess up? What if I let my team down? What if I let my horse down? What if I'm not good enough? What if, what if, what if, what if? And it's very difficult for these people to find any form of relaxation. So internally, unbeknownst to most people, they are battling fears and worries. Now, this type of anxiety, as you can imagine, if you're switched on 24/7, it can be quite paralyzing. It can lead to burnout, definite physical exhaustion. It can be very, very relevant to performance anxiety during competitions. And if you feel as though you're under intense scrutiny, either because you're a professional rider, maybe you're a riding coach and you've got your clients watching you, or maybe you're just the type of person that feels as though other people are criticizing or judging what you're doing, then this can be very, very challenging. What we need to do is recognize it. And in a few moments, I'm going to tell you the signs. Because many people, especially sports people and very much equestrians, think that it's part of their career in equestrianism or part of their hobby even to have those underlying pressures, that physical and mental exhaustion. They begin to see it as normal. And that's when it gets a little bit harmful, because that person has established lots of patterns, physical patterns, mental patterns, emotional patterns, anxiety patterns, you name it, and they're running those, and they just think, well, this is what it means to have a horse, or this is what it means to compete, or this is what it means to bring on a youngster, and so on and so forth. So we've got to kind of start to recognize it so we can get out of thinking that it's perfectly normal. So what is it and what is it not? So you may have heard of generalized anxiety disorder, which is a constant worry about daily things, but high functioning is actually a subset of this, and it's not defined clinically. So you won't find a clinical diagnosis. It's simply something that does happen, but it's not separate from, or at the moment in the medical community, it's not separated from other forms of anxiety. So as I mentioned before, these people are often really successful, but they internally struggle. They have persistent feelings of stress and self-doubt, the fear of not measuring up to somebody else's standard or their own standards. So they're very much on edge, they are uncomfortable, and they struggle with criticism and self-criticism. And I said before, these people are often people who excel. They're often the person you might go to because you think, oh, they've got it all together. What are they doing? So they can, be so good at what they do, and they just seem to breeze through. So they don't avoid situations. In fact, they put themselves into situations. They may put themselves into a situation where they compete, but they don't particularly feel very comfortable. They may be very good at competing, but they don't feel very comfortable doing it. So they don't avoid anything, and they don't retreat from people or life, but they may feel as though they want to do. They may be the person that other people go to for help, and they may be the person that always gives help. They don't have great boundaries. They use that anxiety as a bit of a motivator. So they may exhibit outward symptoms because they're only human, but they may not. And because they are driven, they do have a high level of functionality. So they've convinced themselves that being uncomfortable is part of their drive. It's part of why they are successful. So it's part of my job, and maybe our job, once we know a little bit about that, to help people to realize that it's unnecessary. It's a burden that they really don't need to carry. So what are the red flags then? How can we pinpoint these types of people, or these symptoms, if you want to call them that, in ourselves and other people? They're often very much the A player, the overachiever, the perfectionist. Now, it's great to be an achiever. It's great to use perfection as something that we strive towards, as a goal, to head towards it. But these people have kind of overshot the mark in terms of going into beyond the threshold of what's now maladaptive and not useful. So you've got this illusion of being calm and in control, but that's a bit of a facade, and there is a constant state of worry and fear. So they're living in this paradox where everything looks, beautiful and easy, and their life just flows, but actually there's always this hum of worry and fear and anxiety and imposter syndrome, even because they realize that they put out this very calm and collected facade, but that's not really them. And what keeps them going is this relentless anxiety. They are said to be outwardly thriving, but inwardly just surviving. So internally, we've got constant rumination, constantly going over worst case scenarios, driven by a fear of failure, or a fear of disappointing others, disappointing their horse, being talked about critically. And this inner critic is often their very loudest voice. And the inner critic is never satisfied. So this makes them very restless. If you know somebody like this, or you are like this yourself, there's a profound inability to rest, because these people feel very guilty if they're not being productive, because those patterns are running like constant software, constantly switched on software that they've got to be doing. They've got to be anxious, they've got to be pushing. So they fill every moment with something. And even if they sit down, and they think, I'm just going to have an afternoon off or an hour off, I'm going to just read a book or watch a video, then you can bet they're probably on their phone doing something at the same time, or they feel really uncomfortable and they think, I really need to go and tidy the garage, or I really need to go and clean my tack, or it'll be something else that they're thinking about, so they can't enjoy the rest or the break because they're thinking about something else. Externally, this manifests as perfectionism, and they find themselves double checking everything, double checking themselves, double checking other people. If they are part of a team, they may feel the need to micromanage. They over prepare because that in a way helps them to feel safe, but in another way it means that they're very inflexible. So when things don't go according to plan, this makes it very difficult for them. They're sometimes a difficult person to be with, but internally they're also suffering. And they're also, we said before, they are driven by the need to please and they say yes to every request because it's almost like an internal proof that I can do it, I can take on more, I can see more people, I can do more for them, I can do more for myself, I can fit it all in. But it means that they've got poor boundaries and they can end up quite exhausted. You'll also notice that these people have quite a lot of muscle tension, and depending on what they do, it may be in their neck or their shoulders if they're at a computer all day, it could be in their legs, it could be anywhere. And just think about now yourself listening to this. Have you got tension in a muscle that doesn't need to be there? You know, in your neck or your shoulders or shoulder blades or your calves or your thighs. And externally, they can also suffer burnout, and they can be total insomniacs because their mind is on the go all the time. Coupled with that, we can have high performing, high functioning anxiety people in all walks of life. But we add in a bit more if we're a sports person because we've got that pressure to do well, the need to win, the need to do well. And actually, you know, these people can come first in a competition and not feel good because they'll say, oh, well, you know, I should have come first, or it wasn't my best, or, you know, I didn't quite do what I thought I would be able to do. So the performance pressure, the need to do well, is very often very internal. Other sources of anxiety in sport, things like financial pressures, especially with equestrians. But there's also social and social media pressures. So if they, for instance, are really busy, maybe at work, they're busy with their horses, they're just going through a busy phase, and somebody says, can you come out? We're all going down the pub. Can you come out? Can you meet us? We'd really love to see you. It'd be great to chat and catch up. We haven't been out for ages. All this kind of thing. And that person will say yes. But they will feel under pressure to do it and internally will not want to go. Because they're tired, because they may have just blanked out those few hours in the evening to sit and rest. But now they can't. Social media pressures too. This may come if you have a social media page, or you know, you post photos and you've been subjected to people saying nasty things. You've been subjected to negativity. It might be that people question your tack or question your methods. We know that this happens obviously at the professional level. People are questioning the top sports people all the time, but it's also at amateur levels and recreational levels too. So people do feel this. And that social media pressure, either coming from trolls or posting something and then thinking, oh, are people going to say I've got the wrong bit, or my horse is not in an outline, or is in an outline, or behind the vertical or in front of the vertical, you know, all of these things. So that becomes a bit more of a stress as well. And as we said before, the fear of failure in the sport, especially for a professional. This is their job, and if you don't make it, do you change job? What do you do? What do you do? So there is a need to be seen to be successful. And as I said before, lots of people with high performance or high functioning anxiety have imposter syndrome because they keep thinking people are going to find them out. So just a final word for this podcast in the description of anxiety, and in particular this high functioning anxiety. And then next time I'm going to tell you how we can get rid of it. So equestrian sport, I'm talking obviously about professionals more here, but this could also be you if you ride for somebody else, or if you loan somebody else's horse. You may find that the owners have unrealistic expectations. So these added potential sources of anxiety for equestrians are something else that gets heaped on them. But what about the horse or the rider who is unable to perform, possibly due to injury? And that is also a stress. It's a stress for anybody, any horse owner. It's a stress if your career depends on it. So it's again another set of worries. Then we've got the vet bills. Vets are lovely, lovely people, but their services don't come cheap, and so we've got added financial stress. There may be stresses about renting land, renting your stable. The cost of keeping horses is becoming increasingly difficult. So that again is a stress that people who have high functioning anxiety will be absorbing and maybe not showing outwardly. And also the social license, which I touched on a little bit when I talked about social media. Unlike other sports, we work with an equine partner, and we have to look after them, and we have to make sure that their welfare is absolute front and center. And we have to make sure that people see this. If we're on social media, they acknowledge that we are doing a good job, and that the general public realizes that horse owners are being very appropriate with the way that they train their horses, the way that they feed their horses, the amount of turnout they have, all of these things that go towards having a happy equine partner, not one that just simply does your bidding out of fear. So that can be a bit of a stress, particularly, as I said before, with the professional riders, because people feel that they're being analysed all the time, and sometimes very unfairly. So we definitely have lots of sources of anxiety as equestrians, not least riding, but also competing and all the welfare concerns and the keeping of the horse. So if you are somebody who veers towards high functioning anxiety, then being an equestrian sort of feeds into that even more. So next time I'm going to talk about what we can do about it, how we can start to break down these patterns and start to feel more comfortable, more at ease, and more able to relax. Take care, and I'll see you again really soon.